Hello, I'm responding to Bella, and so I made a couple little notes that I'm just going to be referring back to. So she had talked about Rodney Robinson, and who he was, and what his work is, and I had never heard of him until I watched Bella's video, which, by the way, great job. I loved how you explained everything, but I wanted to add to it and respond to it and give my little, give an insight of how I feel towards it. So, like Bella had said, he wanted to have change. He wanted to change how the education system worked. And she talked about 3 different topics specifically, and I want to I want to bring them up again and explain more in depth of how I feel towards it. And then, so she had said that he wanted to have more funding for low-income communities, and he talked about equity instead of equality. So I was a little iffy about that at first, but then as she kept talking about the equity part, it started to make a lot more sense, because I feel like those then go hand in hand, because she had said that he wanted to give more funding to lower income communities, and I completely agree with that, because they're not getting a lot of funding compared to higher income communities. So by giving them more funding, I feel like we would be making those communities more equal to the other communities. And then he said teachers should be trained in anti-racism so that they have less bias. I also completely agree with that. I feel like, as we've talked about, implicit bias and all of that, I feel like that plays a huge role into it, because you're affecting people without even noticing it. And I feel like this training would definitely help alleviate those implicit biases and just biases in general. And then she had continued to talk about how he wanted a culturally relevant curriculum and a non-biased education. I feel like right now, as it stands, I feel like that can be very hard to navigate as new laws are getting put into office, specifically talking about DEI, and I feel like that can be hard to manage. But just talking in general, I feel like that I kind of agree with that point, although I feel like with schools that don't have a lot of culture going on, I feel like they should focus on places that do, and obviously the places that are very cultural, have a lot of cultures, they should be talking about that, because that's where they grew up. They should know parts of their community. And then she had talked about how he said that we need to diversify schools and have multiple different viewpoints. I 1000% agree with this, because I feel like as a child going into school, you need to be exposed to all of that, because you're going to be exposed to it in the real world. You should be exposed to it at a young age, so that way you're prepared. It's also just good for you to know different viewpoints, so that way you can develop your own sense of how you feel, not just basing your view off one, because children will just follow whoever. But if they get multiple viewpoints, then they can start to develop their own feelings and attitudes toward that. Then she went on to talk about how we wanted to change punishment. I also agree with this. I feel like each child is completely different, and punishment can go many different ways with that. And then she had talked about services for students. I 100% agree that there needs to be more services for students, because although we have certain things in place, again, each child is different, and not every child fits one's services. There needs to be more created, so that way these children have access to be able to do amazing in school one way or another. So yeah, good job, Bella. Your response, I felt like you clearly laid out everything. Great job.